This is Laurie Kilmartin, and welcome to ShowbizMonkeys.com.
Around this town, I'm alright. Around this town, I'm alright. I mean, no consequence when you playing with the fire.
Thanks for joining me today. Welcome to ShowbizMonkeys.com.
Thank you.
We've had a lot of conversations with your CONAN colleagues over the years.
Oh, cool.
My first ever in-person interview was back in 2007 with Brian Stack in the late night offices.
Wow.
So that was a pretty good first interview.
Heck yeah. He's so funny. And I've never been to the late night offices. I only joined up at TBS in Burbank. So
yeah.
Wow.
I thought maybe with, stand up beforehand, you might have been there, but
no, they didn't have me on. I had to squelch my anger when I first got hired. Like, wow, you guys should have known me. Oh well.
But yeah, I have a lot to talk about with your stand up. You've been doing a lot lately, but just to get it out of the way, since I was talking about Conan, we might as well touch on your years of writing on the TBS show and what a writer's room that was. How was that experience getting to work with such great comics and Conan and all of that kind of as a day job?
It was great. It's my most favorite writing job I've ever had. I miss it terribly. And if they started back up again tomorrow, I would walk right back into work and be happy. I worked with really funny people, and it wasn't like a super competitive environment. So, it just felt like you just wanted to please Conan O'Brien, who has very high standards. But it was lots of fun, and I laughed a lot every day. And I miss the monologue meetings because it ended up being just me and Brian Kiley, who's a great, great writer. I learned so much from him. Just sitting around with Conan and Mike Sweeney and Matt O'Brien, the head writer, and just editing jokes and figuring out what words you don't need, which makes you, so much of a better editor for your own stuff, So I just miss it. I miss it immensely. And I'm kind of bummed that, like when we left our offices during COVID in March, we were just going on a hiatus. And of course, we had no idea we'd never come back.
Yeah. So bizarre.
COVID happens, everything's on Zoom, and then Conan decides the show's going to end, and the offices get demolished, and it was just so weird to, like, we were all allowed to come back once to grab our stuff, like a year and a half later or something, and it was just so haunting. And then I walked into the studio, which I'd been walking into for 10 years straight. And, there's the prop room and the dressing room and Conan's room and the audience thing and the audience chairs and the stage. And it was all demolished. It was all just pieces of wood 20 feet high. And I was like, it looked like a bomb dropped in there. And I wish I hadn't seen it. It was just hard to see something that you really loved being at for so long kind of destroyed like that. So
yeah, I just hearing, obviously I didn't work there, it wasn't my day-to-day, but I was lucky enough to go a few times to tapings at the TBS studio.
Oh yeah.
Thinking about it being like you described is wild.
Well, yeah, the dressing room area was really cool. I'm like, you could have rolled that out the elephant doors and it could have been a home for somebody. It had It had bathrooms with shower. All you need to do is plug it into a few things, It was nice. I couldn't believe they destroyed it. Whatever.
I mean, that's show business, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you know what the plans are? I know there's been this generic HBO Max might be show something. Have you heard anything? Do you think you might be working again in that world? No,
I don't think so. I think from what I understand, I think Conan is really enjoying just doing podcasts.
Yeah,
and he gets to do longer interviews and really talk about stuff. And it's a great podcast. What I do know 100% is he hated having makeup put on his face every single day. And he doesn't have to do that anymore, and he doesn't have to gel his hair and make it 3 feet high. So I think he's digging that. And, he worked for so long and And when COVID hit, his kids were still home, and so we got to have the last couple years of teenagehood with his kids. I think his son's my son's age, but his daughter I think is in college now. So I don't know. I think he probably, like a lot of us were like, oh, it's nice to be home with my family. These people I love and don't get to see that much,
Yeah.
And then who knows what's going on with HBO Max right now?
Well,
it just
just
feels
in
like,
general, the industry with the whole,
yeah, but it just feels like all bets are off on what they promised or a year ago. So
Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think it's sometimes a lot of us are like, wow, life is short, and I'm happy doing this stuff, and I have enough money to meet my needs. I don't know. I really don't know.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you've been doing a lot of touring this year. Even like we're doing this interview in advance of JFL Toronto, which you're coming up to at the end of the month. But you've already been to Canada a couple times this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you talk about like getting back on the road, probably more than you had the opportunity to when you were working for Conan and having to like be there half the year, like writing. In the
I mean, when I worked for Conan, I did stand up on hiatus weeks. I would go on the road, and sometimes they would let me do little Friday, Saturdays if I, because we don't tape on Friday, but I that was every once in a while. I didn't want to abuse that privilege, but I never wanted to like lose the ability to do a long set, so I always kept that up. And then thank God, because now I need it. Thank God I still have that because I need it now, so yeah, I'm doing a lot more touring, a lot more road work, and just traveling in what are the worst traveling times, aside from being on a ship in the 1600s, before they figured out how to cure scurvy. I mean, it's just awful right now. So I just talked to another comic who's like, I think I'm done. I'm like, what? What are you going to do? They didn't know, but I love performing. I love it. It's so fun. I can't wait to come to Toronto. I love the crowds there. Air Canada, I'm getting to the airport early because I have a beef with Air Canada from a previous flight where they promised me hotel vouchers and haven't gotten it to me. I mean, it's just weirdly the other stuff is worse than it ever was, but performing is so fun. And maybe because I did so many Zoom shows, I really I'm so grateful when people come out in person, and
absolutely.
I don't know.
And yeah, it's worth, for now anyway, it's worth the travel headaches to get to some of those places. But maybe it'll have to go back to the old days of just road trips. Yeah, I know. They're annoying in their own way, but at least you control when things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I used to put a lot of miles on a car. I ran a car to 500,000 miles.
Okay.
And then
wow.
Then it kind of, that's when it gave up. But it was a Chevy Blazer, and those were like my first 10 years in comedy for sure. So, maybe those days will come back. I don't know. Who knows what's happening now?
Anything
like yesterday, the Ukrainian military chief said an limited nuclear war is possible. I'm like, what? Guys, I can't handle all this. Please. I'm just trying to promote my shows in Toronto. And the Queen died. I can't handle more.
Yeah, our Queen. Yeah, that's right. Now no longer. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you I know you were probably devastated, and thank you for doing the interview anyway.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yes. Thank you. Sure. So you put out a new album earlier this year. Mm-hmm. I've been listening to it. It's for people who've followed your career for a while, like it is familiar as far as like subject matter, and like you're generally, you've never been afraid to talk about, dark subjects or turn regular subjects into something a little darker if the joke is there. Yeah. But you do it in such a silly way that it doesn't feel like heavy to listen to. Oh, thanks. So can you talk a little bit about why you want to use comedy in that way? Is it like for yourself? Is it because you want everyone to be able to deal with, that kind of stuff in a humorous way? Or yeah, what draws you to that kind of comedy?
I don't know. I guess like every comic, you're just what do I want to see if I'm in the audience,
Yeah.
And when you watch a lot of comedy and people start going towards subjects, and you're like, all right, how are you going to deal with this? Oh, you didn't. You went
Yeah.
around it. You bored me. And so I don't know. I don't think I'm different from any comic where you have the ego to go, well, I have an original way to handle this stuff, and I'm going to do it. I guess that makes it more fun. And I definitely like to try to get a laugh on something that's really hard to get a laugh on, if I can
Yeah.
possible. I don't want to get a clap. I don't mind an ooh, but I like if it turns into a laugh, like I want laughs. That's what I'm
Yeah.
going for. So I don't know. I don't think I answered your question, but
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did. And yeah, like there's, I think you're one of the comedians that I could use as an example when people talk about like, comedy. The world isn't safe for comedians anymore to go dark places and all of that. And
oh my God.
but
So
you're an
bad.
example of like proof that like you can talk about any subject matter, but you need to make sure it's actually funny and gets that laugh that you talked about, and B, like make sure that the audience is on your side. Like you're
Yeah.
playing to the audience. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think, part of it comes from like tons of stage time. Like
Mhm.
the audience has to feel, if you're going to start talking about someone dying, like a parent dying, right? The audience has to know they don't have to worry about you, that you're not
Right.
going to break down, that your voice isn't going to get shaky. And so if they know that you're okay, then they'll relax and most often laugh about stuff, and it does take a long, like for me, when my dad died, I was in such shock. I couldn't believe it. And it took me a long time to be able to talk about it without sounding like I needed a hug. And that makes the audience very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
But I think at some point I was like on stage and I was talking about my dad dying, and they're doing the check drop where the audience everyone in the crowd is given their bill, and they just start like figuring out their tips while I'm talking about my dear
Right in the
dad
middle of-
dying.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm healed. I'm just doing this joke anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
And while heads are down and people are mumbling about what they did and didn't order. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. But you do have to get like that kind of tough shell, I guess, a little bit, that you may not have on some things. And then once you do it once, you get better at it when, as life continues and there's more loss and grief or, surprise in your life, you get a little bit better at managing it on stage as a comic.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're one of my favorite follows on Twitter.
Oh, thanks.
And the algorithm obviously knows that because your tweets come up regularly in my list because I'm interacting. No, I'm the one interacting with them and liking them and retweeting them. But yeah, that kind of going back to how you are on stage, you're also that way on Twitter in a way that I really appreciate, where you're not afraid to just say what's on your mind. I know things have shifted since like the early days of Twitter, where it felt like, the only place you could try out one-liners and things. Now it's a much more weird place on the internet, but you still utilize it pretty well. So can you talk about like your experience using Twitter and why you continue to be quite active on there?
Well, you do develop a Twitter personality.
Yeah.
Whether, whatever it is, you develop it. And when I first started, I would just put jokes up on Twitter that Conan didn't pick, that I still liked at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then when my dad started dying and I started tweeting jokes about it, then that changed it for me a lot. Like people started following that. And then I started, I guess, paying attention to Twitter more, and Twitter started changing. It started to have its own language and its own abbreviations and its own, Dan Telford just tweeted something about how Twitter's just punchlines now. Like we don't even do setups anymore. Like it's assumed that you know what the setup is because we're all talking about the story.
Yeah, that's
so
good,
it's
yeah.
weird. Even though it's getting like the best tweets are the ones that like only 5 people get. ideally, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so I've trailed off now. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Like your relationship with Twitter, like you still enjoy it though. You feel like
I
it's
do
something
enjoy
you
it.
like in going
I
on.
do. Yes, I don't get a lot of trouble. I think it's because I'm not blue checked. I really do think if you're a female comedy writer, you should be wary of getting a blue check because that attracts a lot of angry conservative men who don't know why, don't think you're funny, and they don't think women are funny, and they are going to go after you.
Right.
So I feel like I kind of go under the radar a little bit because I'm not a blue check maybe. So I think I get away with a little bit more than somebody, who has that awful target.
Yeah.
Even though it legitimizes you, it kind of sucks. But what I've noticed for women is it really angers men, especially if they're not verified that you are, I see female comedy writers like tweet a joke and then, all of a sudden they're suspended from work for a week. Because somebody was like, oh, so-and-so writer thinks it's funny to say this and stuff. And I was
Yeah.
I was quite relieved when I was on Sean Hannity's radar for a little bit that I wasn't working for anyone and I had no blue check
true.
Because he did a segment about me, but he didn't say my name or he didn't say former Conan writer or anything like that.
It was just comedian on MSNBC says
yes.
this, right?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little careful that way, but I'm in my little corner. I'm pretty happy, I guess, as happy as a person can be when they're on social media, which is really bad for you.
Right, yeah, that's true. Well, I appreciate you being one of the voices that makes going to Twitter more enjoyable for me. So, and
Thank you.
I'm sure a lot of people that follow and appreciate comedy feel the same way.
Thank you.
I guess what's left is to just promote the shows in Toronto, JFL Toronto shows.
Cool. Yeah, the 22nd through the 26th. And then one of them's at the Comedy Bar, I know for sure, in Toronto. And then there's a couple other venues too. So I'm excited. I was in Toronto in April and I kind of worked the outskirts with Josh Johnson and Randy Feltface, that's his character, and Adam Ritchie. But I never actually worked in Toronto while we were staying there. So I'm excited to be in Toronto this time and not have a 2-hour drive on a bus to a gig.